Welcome to Mysteries, Monsters, and Mayhem.
I'm Shannon Lawrence.
And I'm MB Partlow.
Quick content warning before we get started. This podcast may contain language and disturbing content, so enter at your own risk. Well, hi there.
Greetings.
I always think of an alien.
Greetings, Earthlings. We had to, since we weren't in person last time we recorded, we had a little catching up to do.
Yeah, we did. Like an hour before we recorded. I was like, uh-oh.
It was like, well, and then this happened, and it was like, did I tell you about this? Oh, wait, this happened?
And every time we went to record,
one more thing. But now we're mostly caught up.
So since this is relevant, have you been watching... oh no, what is it? Kaylee Cuoco's new show. It's based on a true story is what it's called. I think it's on Hulu or Peacock. And her husband are doing a podcast because she's addicted to true crime podcasts, right? Like she's a total fiend for true crime podcasts. And she figures out that somebody in their life at that time, because I don't want to give anything away, is a serial killer.
No.
And the one that's notorious in the area, she figures it out from something that shows up on the news and that she sees. But instead of turning him in, she kind of forces her husband to approach him and tell him, we know what you did, but we're not going to turn you in because we want you to do a podcast with us as the West Side Ripper. They're fucking stupid. Okay, and the stupid continues throughout the show so far. Sorry, it's amusing, but they're stupid.
That is too stupid to live.
It should be. I mean, all he has to do is decide that he wants to.
Yeah. Hi, I think you're a serial killer. Would you come on my podcast?
Mm-hmm. And the thing is, I'm like, is he really the serial killer? That's what I'm going to find out at the end of the season. Because, we haven't seen him do it.
Okay. No, but I wrote it down.
Yeah.
So
it's entertaining. I will say that whoever did it, I don't think is an actual true crime fan. Because here's the thing. They have decided that everybody who's into true crime idolizes the killers.
No.
Do you see what I'm... Yes.
I understand.
And I was like, there are probably some. There are people who marry them in prison.
Yes.
So I get that's an existing thing. But from what I have seen, and I am part of several true crime communities, we are not idolizing them. We do not think what they are doing is amazing. We don't think it's awesome. We have empathy for the people who were killed.
Yeah.
It's a whole different... So they've completely missed the boat on that.
But I guess they think it makes a better story.
So I had to kind of get past being irritated about that.
Yes.
So I was like, well... We're about to capitalize on this community, but you're insulting them.
It's just like when they talk about anything on TV where they talk about writers.
Mm-hmm.
You have to just swallow everything that has any connection to the real world and just let it go.
Yes, but it's $5 million advance.
Yes, but I think it's also probably that way for the medical field. You know, all the doctor shows, all the 911 shows, all the police shows.
When CSI Cyber came out, Jeffrey couldn't even watch. We tried to watch the first episode, and he was like, "This is so stupid."
I think I've said before on this show. I'm not positive, but I know I've said it recently. Friend of mine in college, very good friend of mine. Her dad was a New York City police officer. He was retired, and he said at that time, the most realistic police show he had ever seen was Barney Miller. He said that was the most accurate show. And I went, good to know.
I forget which one was the most accurate FBI one now. It was not, for the record, Criminal Minds. Pete was like, I wish we had a jet.
I bet.
All right? But he had to watch it because his wife... So Pete, I'm talking about Pete Klismet, who was one of the first to go through the profiling school. He was in the first class.
And he's written several books about his experiences.
So check him out. But his wife was so into Shemar Moore.
Oh.
Who wasn't?
Shemar Moore.
I was like, yeah, that's a bonus to watching Criminal Minds. But
he could be reading the phone
so
book.
He had to watch it every week. And he was like, oh my God, this is so wrong on every
although to be fair, she could watch it without him.
She could, but they like to.
I know.
They like to.
I gave that up. Joe does not like to watch very much TV at all. So
it's funny because we used to watch everything together. I mean, we've been married 27 years or something this year. I don't know. Do the math. 1996, folks. But we reached a point where I was like, I don't like military movies anymore. I don't want to watch them.
Yep.
I don't want to watch people being brutalized for somebody else's idea of what's right. So apparently I'm a hippie now. But I don't like them anymore. And yet there's ones that I'll still rewatch that I liked, right? Mm-hmm. Like Black Hawk Down is good.
Nice enunciation, by the way.
Yeah. You know why? Because I'm also watching the
porn
you asked
version?
about it. No, Fubar.
Oh!
And there's this whole thing with Arnold Schwarzenegger in his accent saying he's cuckolding me. And his nerdy tech guy is like, please stop saying it. It doesn't mean what you think it means. And I need you to, because he's saying cuckolding, right? Cuckolding.
Yes.
I watched an episode last night and he was finally like, I looked up cuckolding and you're right.
Is it good? I only watched the first episode. I kept meaning to go back to it.
I mean, we're finding it entertaining. It's not the favorite thing we're watching right now because I'm kind of annoyed by how much. Okay, so for folks who don't know, he discovers he's CIA. He finds out his daughter has secretly. Was he retired?
Yes, because the very first episode.
Well, they pulled him back in completely.
Well, yeah, he does like his last op.
Yeah.
And then they say, we need you to go in and pull out this operative. And that's when he finds.
And it's his daughter.
And it's his daughter.
Because they've put out what the show's about, so that's not a spoiler. But I was getting fed up because we watched 2 in a row last night with him not respecting her as an agent. And I guess I know that's the premise of the show and everything, and that's them overcoming. But I'm like, you are endangering everybody by trying to not let her do her job. So it was getting on my nerves.
I get that.
But it's still amusing. So I'm going to keep watching it.
Oh, good.
It's not every day.
I will go back to it.
I watched his biography this week.
How was that? That just came out.
It was interesting. So they split it into 3 parts, 3 episodes. The first one is bodybuilding, right? Kind of his origins is growing up and bodybuilding. Second one is how he got into acting. Third one is how he got into politics. So, I mean, very interesting, enlightening. He copped to bad behavior. For anybody who knows about the various he is honest as yes. Obviously, I'm sure we don't know everything, and there's but he cops to things that are out there, and he takes full responsibility for them, which is important to me.
Yes.
He doesn't make excuses for it. He
seems to be fairly, I hate to use this word, but he seems to be fairly evolved.
Yes.
He doesn't, he actually lives the way he talks about living.
Yes.
So he's not trying to be Mr. Universe anymore, but he still stays active every day.
Well, and he talks about his childhood and it really explains why he was so competitive and how he got into all these things, which is, I would recommend watching it if anybody, unless somebody hates him or whatever. The political part I found particularly interesting. There were things I didn't know about there.
That would be interesting. I might be able to get Joe to watch that.
Yeah.
He might not care about the first 2 parts, but he might watch that last part with me.
I found it interesting because there's a point he just got fucking tired of Republicans. He got tired of the dance and all of that. And he kind of paired up with this woman who was fed up with Democrats, right?
Oh.
And that part was interesting to me. I don't want to go into it more if people want to watch it. But they basically both went, let's piss everybody off.
And they did. Magnificently.
Yeah. So I enjoyed that part. I'm watching a lot of things lately.
So last night I watched Svengoolie, which I now do on Saturday nights. It's a horror movie. They're all old horror movies, and he's the host, and he has all the trivia about the making of the movie, about all of the actors in the movie. It's all this fun trivia and hokey jokes. And so last night I tune in, and it's a brand new set. Only it's not the physical set like he had before. It's a computer generated backdrop. And I'm like, what the fuck is going on here? I do not like this. It's different. This is not my comfort watch. I went online today because I was like, well, what the hell happened? Maybe it burned down. Maybe they're renovating it. Renovating it, yeah. Can't find anything.
Put the emphasis on the wrong syllable.
I can't find anything online, so I'm going to have to reach out to our mutual
Really, he
friend.
needs a group, like, because Joe Bob is where I go for, like, there's the Mutant Brigade or something like that for Joe Bob.
I hadn't heard... I did not look on the Facebook group. That should be where... But I'll reach out to Suzanne and go, what the hell happened with the backdrop?
It's funny to me that you reacted that way, and let me tell you why. So, I watched Joe Bob Briggs in The Last Drive-In, and it just came back last night.
I used to watch him back when he was on network.
Yeah, was it Monster Vision, or was it The Last... He's had multiple...
It was the drive-in one.
Okay, so it was.
Yeah. Because I used to watch it. I loved that.
Yeah. So, he has a summer season, and then they do specials for various holidays each year. And the summer session, they split in half, and they took about a month off in between.
Okay.
I didn't count the weeks, so it might be exactly a month. I'm saying about, because I don't know. So, one of the last episodes they did, because it's a double feature each time, and the scene, there's 2 major settings, right? Sets. And they might change between them for those 2. So one is sitting outside of a mobile home.
Yes, I love that. That's what I remember from the drive-in.
And the other one is inside with a setup with like a bar behind them and all this stuff. So they'll switch between those.
I've seen those. Yeah.
Well, they tried to do this whole different... Again, it looked like green screen because there were little things that gave that away. And they were doing a fake talk show. And he involved his mail girl. So I don't know who Rusty maybe was the male girl when you were doing...
I don't remember.
There's people who are major fanboys over the different girls, so I've learned a lot about them. But there was Rusty, Honey, and now Darcy, and I don't know if there were others in between. People have their favorites. Mm-hmm. Darcy's the only one I've known, so... And Darcy's the reason The Last Drive-In is back. Darcy is the one who got Joe Bob engaged and forgot the deal with Shudder and all this shit. She's the mom of an autistic kid son, now he's an adult now, he works on set.
So she wasn't just some
super
a fan. Girl. She's like some kind of producer.
And she's like a number one, like she knows every horror movie. She knows all this. She knows as much as Joe Bob does.
Wow.
In short. And our tastes aren't always aligned, but in a lot of ways they're aligned. I have mad respect for her because she knows her stuff, right? But she used to be, I think, a stripper and stuff like that. So, because she's been attacked about that online before. So that's why I'm throwing it out there, because there was a whole thing with that and her getting bullied online about it from Last Drive-In fans, right? But people fight about it all the time. Mm-hmm. She's been more actively engaging on the show now because she was super shy and she would sit over at her computer kind of off screen and they'd flash on her, but that was it. She didn't want to be on screen. And now she's become very much involved. So she was on there kind of like, you know, there are a couple talk shows where there was the talk show host and then they had their kind of like side, right?
Johnny
Carson and Ed
McMahon. Yep.
And then there was another one of the newer one, I want to say in the 90s though, did the same thing.
Yes.
But I don't.
Andy Richter.
Yes.
Was the sidekick, but I don't know to who.
That's funny because I also remember that he was the sidekick, but not who. But anyway, it's been done. And so they did like a setup like that. Oh my God. The people in the groups lost their shit. They were like, this is not my show. It was exactly what you were saying. That is why it cracked me up. And I was like, I just like that they're trying something different.
True.
And now they won't do that again.
And the thing was, and I missed it last weekend because I was out of town. So I'm like, okay, maybe he talked about, and I won't know but I was surprised I couldn't find anything online about it. And I'm like, to me, I've had some shit.
Uh-huh.
So I just wanted very much my comfort watch.
Yes.
So, and if they'd come on and said, we've got a new set.
And that explains too probably why some of them were so upset. So, you know, I came here, I needed this steady thing. Mm-hmm. Does Svengoolie do one movie or like a double feature?
He just does one.
Okay.
But the show takes 2.5 hours because
the coming in.
Yeah, right. Because there's all the commentary and he's apparently looking for a sidekick. Because I was like, what the? Because he's
getting up there just like Joe Bob is.
He is. So I tend to jump into stuff and then look at the directions later. So our friend Suzanne said, posts about Svengoolie, and I'm like, I'm going to start watching it. He started, when I was online today, I realized last year, I think, he started this spawn of Svengoolie looking for someone who would be, I don't know if it's his sidekick or the heir to the throne, but so there's all these
apply.
there's all these clips of people applying to be, I should be the spawn of Svengoolie because, and some of them I'm like, wow, have you watched the show? Some of them, and I'm like, wow, who let you have a camera?
I would like Darcy to bring me on as her mail girl, except for, because there's talk that eventually if he retires, Darcy should take over. I'm not sure she would. She is still very shy, but she's coming out of her shell. She was baked as hell on one of the episodes last night. And I believe she admitted it on Twitter. Wow. Yeah, I was. Well, because I watched it, I'm like, oh shit, she's stoned.
So with Svengoolie, you don't realize when you're watching him, because he doesn't, it's not like he's running around the set. He's in the coffin that's standing up, and he opens it and steps out, and he maybe steps to the door. It's when he shows a clip of him at like a Comic-Con, and you see him walk across the stage. It's like, I was like, oh my God, why isn't someone helping him?
Okay.
Because he walks, to me, he doesn't, and yes, I know he wears makeup, but he's got a very round face, so his face doesn't really show his age that much. But when he walks, I'm like, somebody help him. Give him an arm to lean
give him an arm. He came on Joe Bob's show.
Nice.
Joe Bob has also had, Elvira. So
nice.
It's always fun when he brings on the old horror hosts. So yeah, I mean, he's sitting in a chair.
Yes.
But Joe Bob does the same thing. Joe Bob's in his 70s. I believe somebody said he was 76, but I haven't checked that. So
Carly Simon turned 80 today.
Wow.
I went, what?
Wow. All right. Let's get started.
I'm rattling paper. Okay, so today I'm going to talk about the Scissor Sisters. And I don't actually know why they're called that.
I can't move because my chair is really squeaky.
It is. Oh my God. So, I kind of, the thought process behind this was sometimes you just need to reassure yourself that your family is not, in fact, the most screwed up family out there.
I don't know. You really got to work hard to prove that to me right now. So,
well, I'm going to introduce you to the Mulhalls. Mom Kathleen and Dad John had 6 children together, 3 boys and 3 girls, and they lived in a working class neighborhood in the south of Dublin in Ireland. Before they married, okay, I'm not going to go way down this rabbit hole, but it is a rabbit hole. Before they married, Kathleen was part of the Irish Travelers, who are also known as the Walking People, an ethno-cultural group indigenous to Ireland. They're often compared to, but not related to, the Romani, formerly referred to as Gypsy people. It's completely genetically distinct. They're not related. But they are also genetically distinct from the settled Irish. So the ones who settled and the ones who traveled around, 2 different gene pools. So, like I said, that is a huge and fascinating rabbit hole. Not going to go there. I will just mention that is her background. That is where she came from. It is said that Kathleen suffered abuse at the hands of both of her parents, and certainly from her husband, John. Medical records support those claims. After leaving her husband, she connected with a man named Firas Swala Noor in November of 2002. So, who was Noor? He was, and it's spelled Noor, so I apologize if I am mispronouncing it. He had this whole story. He claimed to be a refugee from the Somali Civil War who lost his entire family. He actually came from Kenya, and his family will tell you, thank you very much, that they are still alive and kicking. Here's what I don't get. He was going to be deported from Ireland, but he appealed and was granted citizenship in 1999 because he was the father of an Irish-born child. Okay? But I can't understand how anybody looked at this man's record and said, yes, we want him as one of our own. He had 4 convictions for offenses including abusive behavior and assault. In 1997, so this was 2 years earlier, he raped and impregnated a 16-year-old mentally disabled girl. 2 other women that he had children by claimed to have been raped by him. And local officials knew him. The local police knew him very well, very familiar with him, and said he was particularly violent toward women. Why? Why grant him citizenship?
Yeah.
I don't understand. So he lived all around Dublin before he met and moved in with Kathleen. I know it sounds like I've gone to great lengths to tell you what a shitbag this man was, and he was, but while I don't want him to get any sympathy, not any, that's still not to say that he exactly deserved what happened to him. Yeah, so let me just continue. So we're at St. Patrick's Day weekend in March of 2005. At this point in time, Noor was 40 years old. Kathleen's daughter, Linda, was 30 years old. She was a high school dropout. That is not the term they use in Ireland, but that's what we'll all understand. I can't remember the term they use. I had to look it up. So she was a mother of 4. She had no better luck than her mother did picking partners. Her first husband was abusive, and her second partner was arrested and sentenced to 7 years in prison for cruelty to children. So her children were removed from the home for a time, and Linda herself was an alcoholic and a heroin addict. So one of Kathleen's other daughters, Charlotte, was 21 at this time. She had a history of drug and alcohol abuse and had had several run-ins with the law herself, mostly for criminal damage, and she was also involved in prostitution. So I've set the stage. These 4 people decide to party together. It was St. Patrick's Day weekend. They had been drinking all day in the city center in Dublin, and then they went back to Kathleen's apartment. The women were all doing ecstasy, as one does, I guess. So Kathleen crushed some up and put it in Noor's drink so they'd all be on the same page. You're nodding like, yeah, makes perfect sense.
Sure, yeah.
So Linda and Noor are sitting on what was described, it sounds like a love seat. It looks like a couch, but it's really only big enough for 2 people. And Charlotte is sitting on the arm of this chair. So Noor begins touching Linda in a sexual way and whispering provocative things into her ear. And he finally puts his arms around her waist and refuses to let go. Kathleen starts screaming at him and reportedly told the girls that they should just kill him for me. So Charlotte, the daughter not being held by Noor, picked up a utility knife, because I have one in my living room, I'm sure we all do,
sure,
and slashed at his throat. This was enough that he let go of her sister and he fell to the floor, which Linda then picked up a hammer and started swinging at his head. Charlotte kept stabbing him. The body later had 20 or more stab wounds.
Okay.
They didn't just kill him, they killed him.
And was it stabbing with a knife or with the utility?
Utility knife. Killing mom's boyfriend, whacked out on ecstasy, wasn't quite enough. They did have apparently enough brain cells left to realize that they were going to be in some pretty deep shit for this. So Linda and Charlotte drag the body into the bathroom so they can dismember it.
Yeah.
As one does. They cut off his head, his penis, his arms and legs using a kitchen knife and a hammer. What are
the penis they did just because they were mad.
Yes.
Like that's just in dismemberment, typically it just got me. Because it's like I chopped off the legs, arms, all those things that will make it so you can't just fold it into a small space. And they're like, but that would take up very little room. I don't care how well hung you are, very little room.
But it gives new meaning to dismember.
Yes, it does.
They used towels to soak up the blood as they worked. Who has that many towels? I mean, a human being has a lot of blood in them.
Yep. Nope.
So they put the body parts into black plastic trash bags, which they threw into the Royal Canal. And they said they took several trips to get these there and heave them in. They didn't want the body to be identified. So they put the head in a sports bag, and the 3 of them took a bus to a park to get rid of the head. So fun fact, There's video footage of them stopping to eat breakfast rolls on the way. The head is in a bag on Linda's shoulder.
Ew.
So you have this fucking drippy head in your bag.
8 heads in a duffel bag. Did you ever see that?
I have not. Well, no, I take that back. I might have. Anyway. Yeah.
So they didn't want him identified. Did they throw his hands with the fingerprints in?
Yes.
Okay. Just checking.
In the park, Charlotte used a knife to dig a hole where they buried the head. Kathleen then took the knife and the hammer and threw them in a pond.
Mm-hmm.
So it's rumored, but not proven one way or the other, but it's rumored that Linda returned several days later, dug up the head, chucked it in her son's school bag, and reburied it in a new location after breaking it up with a hammer.
Oh.
Or she may have broken it up with a hammer and distributed the pieces of the skull into different rubbish bins. Both were floated out.
Both are thorough.
The point is, his head has never been found.
Okay.
Neither has his penis. The murder was discovered 10 days after it happened when people spotted a leg with a sock on it floating in the canal.
Jesus.
Police dive, and I'm like, the sock, just that detail kills me. Police divers retrieved most of the rest of his body, and again, never found the head or the penis. His body, this is sad. His body was only identified when police made some photos public. I would assume they were
tattoos
not graphic. Asking for help. Someone recognized the t-shirt the torso was wearing.
Okay.
So I'm guessing because he'd had so many run-ins with the law, I'm guessing that maybe because of the being in the water, they couldn't get fingerprints. I don't know.
Yeah, it could certainly make it harder.
Someone, it's like one person recognized the t-shirt and one person said he is connected to these 3 women.
Wow.
So the sisters and their parents, both their mom and dad, were arrested, but they denied any knowledge of what happened to Noor. So the case broke a week later when Linda went to the police and admitted her involvement. After that, they searched Kathleen's apartment and were able to match the bloodstains to Noor's DNA. After Linda confessed, Kathleen fled the country and was unable to be located for 3 years. Now, she was unable to be located. She was across the fucking channel in England. How hard did they look? And
not very.
Size-wise, England, not that big. Linda and Charlotte went separately to trial in October of 2006. While both were charged with murder, Linda was found guilty of manslaughter and sentenced to 15 years in prison. Charlotte was found guilty of murder and given a life sentence. Kathleen returned to Ireland in early 2008 and was charged. Oh my God, there was a list of crimes she was charged with. I'm not going to detail them all. She pled guilty to cleaning up the crime scene to conceal evidence, and she was sentenced to 5 years in prison in May of 2009. John Mulhall, Kathleen's husband and the father of these 2 girls, committed suicide shortly after they were sentenced. After the girls were sentenced. Some say when he heard their sentence, he killed himself. And some say it was just, he went to a park and hanged himself.
Oh, okay.
Like, well, that's, yeah. I'm like, don't inflict that on school children.
Right, on random, whoever finds you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Linda continued to drink heavily and attempted suicide, slashed her arms, resulting in some time in a psychiatric hospital. This was while she was in jail. In prison. She was released after serving 12 years and was last reported as having trouble adjusting to life outside of prison. One report I found said a reporter did find her and she was like, I just want to be left alone. Didn't want to talk about it. I don't blame her. She was taken to the hospital after a close call involving an overdose and slashing her arms again after she got out. Kathleen served her time, became involved with religion while in prison. That's new. And sincere, too, I bet. Yeah. And now she lives in Dublin again. Charlotte has had a much more dramatic time in prison. She just fucking, for a long time, she challenged everything with no basis because they delineated everything she tried. She challenged their right to move her to a new prison. There are claims that she was caught in a compromising position with both a male correction officer and a female corrections officer. The male officer was caught hiding in her bathroom behind a shower curtain. They have film, they caught him on the closed circuit TV film going into her room, and it's like, he doesn't come back out for like 10 minutes, and then they go in and he's hiding. So, and I'm like, yeah, there's something going on there. She was also disciplined after a photo was made public of her jokingly holding a knife to a male inmate's throat. They were both working in the kitchen. And I'm like, why do these people have fucking cameras? Because it was released to the newspaper, now granted, they have
a security camera.
But why would the prison release that to the papers?
An employee might leak it. Yeah.
That's got to be what it was. As for release, the statement is there is no evidence that she would be able to fit back into normal society. So they
doesn't seem like it.
No, she is having a bad time of it. Oh, I doubt that when you stab a man to death and hack him to bits and throw him in the canal.
It's probably weirder if you get over that.
Yes.
Yeah. If you're fine with it.
And so now that I've told you the whole story, I still have no idea why they're called the Scissor Sisters, because they didn't use scissors.
There were no scissors involved.
No, it was a utility knife. There was a different name for it. I don't know what they call it there. No, but I looked it up.
Box cutter?
It looked like a box cutter, but that wasn't.
Yeah, I don't.
So
I just think that they like the sound of it, and so they sometimes they assign it in such a stupid way.
Yeah, it's alliterative, and there was a lot. I imagine maybe the stab wounds could have looked like, if it was a box cutter kind of utility knife.
Yeah,
could have looked, but they aren't really.
No, because we saw when we went to the coroner's thing what it looks like when they're closed scissors, right? Because you got that little hump in between them. Yeah. You got that it's off by that little bit.
We saw so many stab wounds.
We did. So many different kinds. But it was interesting and very helpful to know how to tell them apart.
Yeah, that was fascinating. That was absolutely fascinating. So that is the story. I just was like, what the hell? This is why we don't do drugs with our parent and their boyfriend.
Never done ecstasy. I cannot report on it.
I have not either. I knew a lot of people who did it, but
it would probably be super funny for me to take it because I don't like physical contact. And from what I've seen with ecstasy, that would change.
Possibly.
That changes when I get alcohol in me, though. My bubble gets smaller. So,
but never disappears.
Oh, it doesn't. No.
So my sources for this, and I cannot remember, the one source I forgot was one of those. I think I tried to look up Criminal Sisters, but all I kept getting was references to Sisters in Crime, which is an organization of women who write and read mysteries. It's a wonderful organization. Which is
funny because that's the name of the big podcast that I think is supposed to be off My Favorite Murder on that show that I've been watching. They called it Sisters in Crime.
There is a podcast, yes, called Sisters in Crime. But
is there?
Why would you call
fake?
Why would you call yourself Sisters in Crime when there's this big organization?
Well, but if you're not a writer, you wouldn't know about Sisters in Crime.
That's true.
Yeah.
Have you got the Google?
If you're not a writer, do you even think about writing groups?
Okay, that's true.
No.
Oh, anyway, so I can't remember when I looked up, there was one of these. Here's 5 sibling sets that did horrible things. I can't remember where I got that. I didn't mark that, but Wikipedia, obviously, I got a lot of background there. The Irish Mirror and the Irish Times. So what do you got for us today?
Okay, well, I said I was going to do the Unabomber, so I had to do the Unabomber.
You're a woman of your word.
Try. Okay, I did learn a lot. Because like I said then, I was like, I know the things I've just kind of absorbed, right? But I never actually researched him. I hate to say it. Interesting guy, interesting background. If he hadn't gone batshit crazy.
Ted Kaczynski?
Yeah. Yep. All right.
I can't believe I remember that. Well, it's probably because he just died.
Yeah. On May 25th, 1978, a person walking on a campus of the University of Illinois in Chicago found a package. It was stamped and had the return address of a Northwestern University professor named Buckley Crist, I'm assuming, Crist Jr. The person who found it ensured it got to the professor, who knew he hadn't sent the package. He's like, I didn't send a package. So he contacted campus security to report the suspicious package. The security officer, Terry Marker, opened the package, which exploded, injuring the officer but not killing him. And I was like, why would campus security be in charge of taking care of a suspicious package and they didn't call the cops in?
But that was very much pre 9/11.
I guess, but
I didn't realize it went back as far as 78, and I'm like, I'm surprised he didn't just fucking open it. Well, I'm glad he was suspicious and he didn't open it, but...
Yeah, but I was like, you're not an expert on, like, ballistics or whatever you call, if they know bombs. Anyway, I was like, really? But
those were the halcyon days when they didn't think people did weird shit like that just for kicks.
This was the first exploding package that would be delivered in a reign of terror that would last from 1978 to 1996, the year I graduated and got married, leading to one of the most expensive manhunts in FBI history. I have to say, 1996 was an active year. Like, I want to look up all the crazy shit that happened that year. There was a lot. Mm-hmm. And it was like all this background. Jason Galinsky, I think, it was in 96. Yeah. So anyway, I was just like, what was up with 1996? But anyway, it led to one of the most expensive manhunts in FBI history. At one point, a $1 million reward was offered for information leading to his capture, ultimately acquiescing to a request from the man who became known as the Unabomber, which was based on the FBI's case identifier Unabomb, UNABOM, which stood for University and Airline Bomber. I didn't know where his name had come from.
I didn't either.
It was the designation on the files.
Okay.
That would lead to his downfall. On May 9th, 1979, a cigar box was left in a room of Northwestern University where graduate students typically hung out. One student, John Harris, opened it and was injured when a bomb exploded. November 15th, 1979, a bomb went off somewhere new. This time it exploded in the luggage compartment of an American Airlines flight departing from Chicago. The bomb didn't actually work as intended due to what turned out to be a faulty timer. So the injuries caused here were from smoke inhalation. It just sent out a bunch of smoke. It didn't actually explode. 12 passengers were treated for smoke inhalation. It was thought that had the bomb gone off successfully, it would have downed the plane. They said it would have obliterated the plane, and I don't believe that because none of these obliterated a building. So I think that was some blown up bullshit.
Hyperbole.
But maybe he made it different for the... I don't know. In 1979, the ATF paired up with the U.S. Postal Inspection Service to create a team investigating the Unabomber. Eventually, 150 investigators strong, also with the FBI, they studied every remnant of every bomb and everything about the victims they could learn. The Unabomber was too good, though, and none of it led back to him. The bomb elements were untraceable because they were made from basic items and scraps. Mm-hmm. In fact, the postal inspectors originally called him the junkyard bomber.
And remember, this was before the internet. Mm-hmm. So he wasn't going online and looking up how to do this.
Mm-mm. Occasionally, the letters FC were found somewhere in the bomb, usually the end cap of the pipe. Fingerprints that were not the Unabomber's were found on bomb elements, though his prints never were. He made sure he didn't leave prints behind. Sometimes he included bark or wood in the bombs, and that's going to become clear why here shortly. June 10th, 1980, the president of United Airlines, Percy Wood, opened a package holding the book Ice Brothers by Sloan Wilson. The book held the bomb. It was in the book.
That's bad.
Uh-huh.
I'm like, I don't care.
He changed it like every time.
Yes, that is just wrong.
Like, how would you feel being Sloan Wilson?
Right.
It went off and caused severe cuts and burns all over his body. October 8th, 1981, this time the bomb was wrapped up in string and brown paper and left in the hallway of the University of Utah, located in Salt Lake City. A Brigham Young University professor's home address was on the package as, again, the return address. Turns out that's a really good way to get that to people.
Who was it addressed to, though?
The Brigham Young University professor. I didn't put his name.
Oh, I thought that was his I thought you said the return address was his.
Oh, yeah. They never said who they were addressed to. Because I wondered that too, but it didn't matter. And so I'm like, did it have a forwarding address? Because why would people try and return it to the sender?
I would think you would drop it in a mailbox.
Yeah. Yeah. So I wondered the same thing. Like, wouldn't you just then be like, take it to the post office and be like, I found this?
Yes.
But instead, they're like, oh, I need to get this back to the person who sent it. So, yeah, I don't know if there were addresses to, if not, and not just the return address. And it was stamped both times. He'd put, in fact, he was, the stamps ended up being kind of traceable and not in that they could trace who'd bought it, but putting it all together, he used a specific kind of stamp each time. It was considered a suspicious package and detonated safely by police.
Oh, yay.
May 5th, 1982, a secretary named Janet Smith opened a package intended for her boss, the head of computer science at Vanderbilt University. She suffered burns and shrapnel wounds. July 2nd, 1982, I think she must have been sitting because I believe hers were like upper body and face. July 2nd, 1982, it was a bomb at UC Berkeley that exploded in the break room and injured an engineering professor, I love his name, named Diogenes Angelakos. I'm like, Greek much?
But he's going all over the place.
Yes. Which would help later because they're like, where did this person live at any given time? Oh, gee, everywhere he fucking lived, there was a bomb. As with Janet, he suffered burns and shrapnel wounds. And on May 15th, 1985, it was an engineering student named John Hauser in the same hall at Berkeley who was injured by a bomb. He lost 4 fingers, the artery in his right arm was severed, and he lost partial vision in his left eye. Ooh. The bomb was made out of wood. June 13th, 1985, a package was mailed to the Boeing Fabrication Division in Auburn, Washington. Once more, recipients viewed it with suspicion, and it was detonated safely. So this time it was actually mailed somewhere. November 15th, 1985, James V. McConnell, a psychology professor at the University of Michigan, received a package with a letter asking him to review a master thesis. He opened it to find a 3-ring binder containing a bomb. This time it was inside a 3-ring binder.
Because, well, that one was actually very clever. I mean, it's still wrong. Don't get me wrong. I'm not. But to send it to a professor and say, would you review this thesis? Mm-hmm. And you open it and you see a 3-ring binder, nobody's going to think, oh, could be a bomb. Yeah. I mean, I will now, but.
Everything could be a bomb, apparently, including books you get shipped. You know how many books I get shipped?
Uh-huh.
The bomb went off, injuring him and one of his students, Niklaus Swino, S-U-I-N-O. James suffered only temporary hearing loss, but Niklaus suffered burns and shrapnel wounds. Oh. December 11th, 1985, the Unabomber claimed his first fatality. Hugh Scruton, the owner of a computer store in Sacramento, found a package in the parking lot that detonated and killed him. It was full of nails and wooden splinters.
Oh.
On February 20th, 1987, the Unabomber was witnessed leaving a package that resembled wood, they said timber, in another computer store parking lot, this time in Salt Lake City. The store owner's son opened the package, which detonated and caused severe nerve damage in his left arm. But this crime would net infamous sketch of the Unabomber wearing a red hoodie that we've all seen. Yep. While his bombs were getting better, he was kind of getting sloppier. Just leaving it in a parking lot. It did not say if, for example, it was stamped and had a return address. Right. I could not find that on these. So it might have been that same thing he'd been doing earlier. But this time people are like, I'm going to open this. So I don't know. June 22nd, 1993. A bomb sent to a Berkeley geneticist's home blew up in his kitchen and caused partial hearing loss and the loss of 3 fingers. Charles Epstein would later return to work, dying at a ripe old age. He returned to his work. He worked in, if I remember right, he was doing stuff in like studying Down syndrome and stuff like that. I'm like, why?
What? Yeah.
But it did not stop him. He went back to work and he continued his work in the field.
It seems like some of them were targeted because they had names on them, but some were not. And how did he? Yeah. Okay.
June 24th, 1993, just 2 days later, a Yale computer scientist named David Gelernter lost the use of his right hand and suffered burns and shrapnel wounds, as well as damage to his right eye. This bomb had been mailed to him at the college. But you see, these bombs are small enough that obliterated the airplane just doesn't make sense to me. December 19th, 1994, the Unabomber's second fatality was an ad executive. I was like, what? And I will get into it. I think it gets explained here when I get into all of that. But I was like, an ad executive? Then here we go. I added the info in. So it was an ad executive at Burson Marsteller named Thomas J. Mosser who received a bomb by mail at his home in New Jersey. The Unabomber sent a letter to the New York Times afterwards saying Mosser got the bomb because he'd helped Exxon improve their public image after the Exxon Valdez oil spill. Finally, on April 24th, 1995, Gilbert Brent Murray, the president of the California Forestry Association, which sounds more honorable than it is, it was a group that lobbied for the timber industry. Because when I first read that, again, I was like, what?
Yeah.
Because it doesn't make sense when I get to why he's doing things. And then I was like, oh, they were just a lobbying group that sounded like they were. Yeah, okay.
That wasn't on purpose, I'm sure.
Received a package at his office addressed to his predecessor, which proved to be a bomb. He was the third to die and the final victim of the Unabomber. Another geneticist, Philip Sharp from the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, received a threatening letter, but no bomb. That same year, the Unabomber sent various letters to newspapers and a 35,000-word manifesto to the FBI and insisted it be published in the papers. In exchange, he would desist from terrorism. That's a quote from him. In it, he ranted about industrialization. He felt society needed to be destroyed to rid it of the psychological suffering from industry, society, and environmental damage. He felt leftists were responsible for many of the ills. Ironically, he felt it was left-wing politics that were destroying the environment and stripping freedom from humanity. And I say ironic because I don't know what Democrats what their involvement with the environment was back then. I was not old enough to give a shit. But I'm like, now, clearly it's usually liberals that are trying to protect the environment. So, but again, I know that politics morphs over time, and so I do not know where they stood on it then. He was also anti-conservative, for the record, and felt they were whiny and contributing to society's decay.
He just didn't really like anybody.
No. He was anti-science and technology and felt diversity was a strategy, not an idealism. So when leftists talked about diversity, he was like, you're doing this for the political reasons. You don't actually care about diversity. And you know what? With the politicians, that's certainly true. He signed it the terrorist group FC. So there's those initials. And in his letters, he always referred, it was we.
Okay.
Penthouse offered to publish it. The dude was like, I'll publish it. I'll put that. Of course. The Unabomber said, fuck no. He said they weren't respectable enough. And if they published it, he would reserved the right to plant one more bomb in response.
Wow.
Right?
Okay. Pissy little terrorist, wasn't he?
Janet Reno made the final decision to go ahead and allow the Washington Post to publish the manifesto in its entirety. They debated, of course, like, is it good or bad if we publish this? But if he was really going to stop doing bombs,
then it's worth it to stop him.
Yes. It was published September 19th, 1995. They asked the public to look for clues in the manifesto that might tell it was someone they knew. A long shot, it paid off. David Kaczynski contacted the FBI and said it looked and sounded like his brother. His brother Ted lived in Montana in a small 10 by 14 cabin that was entirely off-grid. I use that verbiage hysterically. Every single article said, in a small cabin with no power or running water. They all said it exactly that way. And I was like, yeah, a lot of people actually live off-grid. I have a cabin that's like that. I'm not sending letter bombs. Calm your fucking tits. They'd grown up in Illinois, where the first bombs were. Ted had been a teacher at Berkeley.
Okay.
And he had briefly lived in Salt Lake City. So everywhere where the bomb was just left and not mailed, he had lived. Okay. David was able to hand over letters written by his brother to newspapers in the past that experts determined matched the manifesto. He had some very specific ways of not capitalizing or over-capitalizing and verbiage. He had misspellings he made consistently.
Like if you were examining my writings, it would be the word so.
It would be just for me. Just. This followed... Now, before he made this call, David had actually hired a private investigator. I mean, nobody wants it to be their brother.
Correct.
So he hired a private investigator to look into things. He handed over the evidence the private investigator had found as well. He and his family ultimately wanted to keep Ted from a situation like Ruby Ridge, which had happened in 1992, and Waco in 1993. That was their fear. So they thought, if we can get involved and get this information, then maybe we can ensure this doesn't happen.
That he gets taken into custody in a
Though he'd asked he'd asked to remain anonymous. He didn't want his brother to know that he turned him in. He didn't want the family's name out there. Someone leaked his axe to the press at the beginning of April before the FBI moved.
Ooh.
The FBI was then forced to 24 hours. They had to ask for 24 hours from the paper so they could go after Kaczynski, right?
That's irresponsible.
And who was it? Nobody knows. A search warrant was obtained, and Ted Kaczynski was arrested April 3rd, 1996. In his cabin were found a ton of scraps and bomb-making materials, a completed bomb waiting to be mailed, and over 40,000 journal pages that were basically his thoughts about how to make bombs, about what had gone right and wrong, and also specific details about the people that he'd sent bombs to. They did determine that they were randomly chosen in searches at the library.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. Theodore John Kaczynski was born May 22nd, 1942. His parents were Polish Americans. His dad worked as a sausage maker. I just found that fun, and I just wanted to put that detail in there. And he had a younger brother, Polish sausage maker. God damn. Sorry. And they didn't say what his mom did, so I'm assuming she was a stay-at-home mom. But, forget what women do. Who cares? And he had a younger brother who would end up being instrumental in his later capture, as I've already said. Both Kaczynski brothers were bright and did well in school, but Ted stood out as a genius. The family moved around Illinois some, settling in Evergreen Park in 1952. At Ted's new school, he was tested and found to have a 167 IQ.
Oh, that's up there.
Yeah. So the family chose to have him skip 6th grade. They tried to get me to skip a grade. My parents were like, I think that's a bad idea.
I agree. Other people I've talked to who have had their child skip a grade said don't do it.
It did not go well for Ted. Despite having had no problem socializing with his peers before this move, he was actually considered a leader. He got along with people. And despite joining various clubs and marching band, he was in like 4 clubs, and he played trombone in the marching band.
Wow.
Skipping a grade had a deep impact on Ted. He didn't fit in with the older kids, and he ended up pulling into himself, kind of shutting down. Neighbors would even describe him as intelligent but lonely after that point. He did end up in a group of boys called the Briefcase Boys. Bomber aside, I have such a thing for nerds. I just think they're adorable. I'm sorry. I just do. Sorry, nerds. But I just have this mental image of these nerds that they were mathematically and scientifically inclined boys who carried briefcases around school.
Oh my God.
Come on. It's so nerdy and so cute.
It is.
Come on. I want a briefcase. Once more, Ted skipped a grade. So they had him skip 11th grade. Oh. And instead of then going to 12th grade as normal, he went to summer school and completed his 12th grade year.
Okay.
So that was directly after 10th grade. He graduated high school when he was 15 years old. In 1958, he won a National Merit Award and started attending Harvard as a 16-year-old.
No.
Yeah. So this compounded his issues, obviously. And this is, of course, not an excuse for murdering people. I want to be super clear here, but I did find it all very illuminating.
Yes.
Just because you get skipped a grade or you get bullied, it didn't even really say you got bullied. Just they talked to a former classmate and they said, here's the thing. And nobody mentioned bullying. Here's the thing. Nobody viewed him as a person. He was a walking brain. And that's just how people saw him. So there wasn't this interpersonal, he just didn't have interpersonal interactions. Yeah. It sounds like
they ignored him.
Yeah.
Which is
they were probably a little freaked out by somebody that smart.
Yes.
But he never says he was bullied, not in anything I saw anyway, because there were plenty of interviews with him afterwards. He was willing to talk to people. So, of course, he's way younger than everybody, and he didn't even have a driver's license yet, and he's going to Harvard. In his sophomore year at college, Ted signed up for a psychological study led by Henry Murray. This is fascinating. I'm totally going to look into this on my own. Who had previously worked in the Office of Strategic Services, which is considered the predecessor to the CIA. Mm-hmm. It's rumored that he was part of MK Ultra during World War II.
Oh.
The experiment consisted of participants writing an essay about their personal philosophies and aspirations. They were told that they would then speak to somebody who had read their essay, and they would be able to discuss the things in each other. Yeah, no. They would be hooked up to censors, the person who'd written this essay, and another person who had read this essay would use the information gleaned from it to make harsh and abusive attacks on that person that were deeply personal, because they were supposed to put their aspirations, their life goals,
God, what was
their
the point
personal
of this?
beliefs. Mm-hmm. And then Murray would study their reactions, how this impacted them.
Negatively?
Then later, he'd hook them up and he would play back the footage of them being attacked so that they could watch their responses and respond to their responses and being attacked again. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's fucked up.
That's way fucked up. Who approved that?
Though this has been pointed to as a possible turning point, Ted Kaczynski did deny that. He said, it was awful and I hated that man, but that didn't make me the Unabomber. And I'm like, I actually beg to differ a little bit. He participated in this study for the last 3 years of his schooling.
For 3 years?
He spent over 200 hours being
bullied,
brutalized and bullied.
Oh my God. I thought this was like a one-off.
3 years. So did I.
Oh.
200 hours of that treatment.
That's awful.
Watch A Clockwork Orange like it's the opposite, right? Yeah. They're trying to make him better, but this was an intelligence officer from World War II doing this shit to them.
Torturing them.
Who thought that was okay? But I know that's why Stephen King wrote Firestarter, because that was all about doing crazy psychological studies on people. It was a thing that was happening. But you see, like, how it's getting illuminating?
Yes.
In 1962, he graduated with a bachelor's in mathematics. He then went to the University of Michigan, where he got his master's and doctorate in mathematics, graduating in 1967. His dissertation, entitled Boundary Functions, won the Sumner B. Myers Prize, and he was offered a job as an acting assistant mathematics professor at Berkeley, where he started in 1967. Within a year, he was given an assistant professor position, and he would be the youngest professor in the history of Berkeley. He wasn't a great teacher, getting low ratings from his students. They said he was awkward, that he taught directly from the book, and he wouldn't answer questions outside of it. In 1969, he resigned with no reason, and it was abrupt. He moved back home for a short time, but moved to Montana in 1971. In order to make money, he worked odd jobs, but his parents also were floating him money to help. His brother might have too, because it said his family. He didn't have a car, only a bicycle, and he would ride into town for supplies. He frequented the local library in Lincoln. The librarian said he read a lot of political philosophy and sociology during that time. And his brother David said that Jacques Ellul's book, The Technological Society, was his Bible. I don't know anything about that book.
I don't either.
I will say that they were like, he was not unusual in Lincoln, Montana. There were plenty of people living out in the boonies, completely off the grid, whatever weird types.
Right, that's not...
There were probably some survivalists out there, Montana is still like that. Parts of it. In 1975, he started sabotaging developers in the area. He would set fires, he would create booby traps with the intention of stopping the development.
Right. That's not unusual.
So we're seeing some progression here.
At that time.
He loved living out in the boonies. He actually became very good at survivalism in terms of not the apocalypse is coming, but being able to hunt his own food and live off the grid completely. He was very good at some point. They said his father came out and visited and was deeply impressed with what he had figured out and how he was living. In 1978, in need of money, he moved back to Chicago briefly and took a job at a foam rubber factory with both his dad and brother. But his brother David had to fire him after he wrote inappropriate limericks about a female supervisor he was interested in who he'd been courting. And she says that she turned him down. Nothing ever happened. So his brother had to fire him. In 1983, a favorite spot of his that was hard to get to, about a 2-day hike from his remote cabin, he showed up there And they had developed and run a road right through the middle of it. He described it. I thought about quoting it, but I figured this is going to be long enough. But there's this whole paragraph of him describing just the utter beauty and the wilderness. And there was a waterfall and the trees and this overlook. And they had destroyed it.
Mm-hmm.
There's some things that I can agree with that he had a problem with, but I wouldn't send bombs. I mean, just to be clear, I'm seeing, like, that would upset me too.
You could sympathize with the things that matter to him.
I'm maddish about the stupid, ugly buildings they built over here. And every time I go up to my hike now to take a picture of Pikes Peak, those ugly-ass buildings have to be in it. That makes me mad. Not mad enough to bomb them, but honestly, I really hate the people who built it. Everybody around here fought it. It didn't matter, by the way. If they send you that thing, come to this meeting and fight this, that's bullshit. It's never going to stop it. But that is when, and he wrote about this, he was already sending bombs at this time. This is 1983. He's already sent a few bombs out. This is when it increased his determination to destroy the system. And it moved him from just sabotage to full-on revenge. Then he was just livid and he wanted people to pay for it.
I wonder if he wanted to destroy the system, why he wasn't sending any of these to politicians.
Yes. It was very misguided. Mm-hmm. And like when you read his stuff, I'm like, and you hated politicians so much, but you never sent anything to a politician, to a judge, to anybody in charge of the environment and destroying it, and never to developers. I mean, he was, though, completely separate from these mail bombs. He was committing arson and doing booby trapping, but he was not sending them bombs. And I don't know why that is. Weird. So, his dad was diagnosed with terminal lung cancer in 1990 and committed suicide by gunshot on October 2nd of that year. Following his arrest, Ted Kaczynski refused to plead insanity, firing his lawyers when they pushed for it. He pled guilty in January of 1998 following a failed suicide attempt. He got life imprisonment with no possibility of parole and was placed in the Supermax here in Florence, Colorado. His belongings, aside from bomb components, were auctioned off in 2011 and raised $232,000, all of which went into paying toward the $15 million restitution he was ordered to pay. Like, I get why they levy that, but this dude was living in a cabin and had no money. That's never going to get paid out. So do they split? Here's $5 for you. Here's, there is a video available online of the FBI actually took down his entire house and moved it and now to like their offices and rebuilt it. And you can watch the video of them rebuilding the cabin. It's pretty interesting. While in the Supermax, he befriended Ramzi Youssef, who had committed the World Trade Center bombing in 1993, and Timothy McVeigh, who committed the Oklahoma City bombing in 1995. After McVeigh's execution, he stated that he liked him, but his bombing had been unnecessarily inhumane. Jesus. I guess maybe because he took out children.
I was going to say, it's okay if you just kill them one at a time.
Yeah. I found that I needed to add that in there. I was like, well, that's fascinating there, bud. On December 14th, 2021, after a diagnosis of cancer, Kaczynski was transferred to the Federal Medical Center in Butner, North Carolina. On June 10th, 2023, just after midnight, he was found unresponsive in his cell. He had finally successfully committed suicide. This was not his first attempt since entering prison. He left behind fans of his who continued to espouse his beliefs, including people who called themselves primitivists, neo-Luddites, eco-fascists, and neo-Nazi groups, none of which he likely would have agreed with, as he felt at the very least that fascism was, quote, kook ideology, and Nazism was, quote, evil. He also published 2 books while in prison, Technological Slavery, The Collective Writings of Theodore J. Kaczynski, and Anti-Tech Revolution, Why and How. So a lot of his stuff, including, I don't know if Boundary Functions, which was his...
Right.
Yeah, dissertation is available, but you can find a bunch of his stuff online. And yeah, these people hold him up as some kind of anti-tech hero, but he didn't respect them. My sources were FBI.gov, the New York Times, History.com, and ABC News, and Wikipedia.
Wow.
So yes.
That was quite illuminating because, everybody heard about the Unabomber and the whole hoodie thing.
And we all knew he lived in this remote cabin, so we viewed him a very specific way.
Yes, but I did not know I did not know all of that.
No. And again, there are things in there, small things, and again, not that I believe should lead to murder or bombing people.
Right.
But I'm like, okay, I can see why you're upset about that.
Yeah.
I can also see how you became fucked up, even if you denied that was how you became fucked up. You're not a psychologist, nor do you play one on TV or in your cabin. Some people leading up to the court case, 2 psychologists found him schizophrenic. He disagreed. And then he, in interviews later, said, no, I've been evaluated since then, and I am not schizophrenic. So I don't know. Obviously, there was something.
Obviously.
He was mentally ill in some way. Yeah.
Damn.
So I feel bad for his brother. I think that was a shitty position to be in, and he could have looked the other way.
And a lot of people would.
Yes, they would. And he did not. So he saved lives.
Mm-hmm.
And you know what? Possibly he saved his brother's life in some ways for a while there too.
That is possible.
That wasn't a good life. Just scribbling and making bombs and sending them to people and getting angrier and angrier and angrier.
If he had been, it's not the fact that he was living in an isolated place by himself.
Right.
But it's all that anger, all that bile that has to go somewhere.
And it didn't. I wait until except for in his bombs and his booby traps and all that stuff.
I remember he wrote pages and pages and pages.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know anyone who's read it. I don't think.
I don't know. It's probably available somewhere. Like some of it at least. I think they auctioned off a lot of that.
God.
But he fought to have parts of it. Or no, they redacted parts of it. I think especially if it had the victims. They redacted anything that had to do with the victims. He tried to legally fight that. He said he had freedom of speech. Oh. And therefore they should not redact anything in his writings. And I believe that if it had to do with how to make bombs, they also redacted that.
Well, I get that.
So basically what they were auctioning off were his ravings. So, yeah.
I have lots of ravings. I wonder if there's a market for those.
I do that on here sometimes, but this is the tip of the iceberg.
Really? I never get off on a tangent like that.
Never. All right, guys. Thanks for listening.
Yes.
Check us out on Buy Me a Coffee /MM Mayhem. And
we will talk to you again next week.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you for listening to Mysteries, Monsters, and Mayhem.
Find us on Facebook and Instagram or at our website, mysteriesmonstersmayhem.com.
Please like, rate, and review, follow, and share wherever your favorite podcasts are downloaded.
Thank you for listening and supporting our podcast. We'll be back next week with more shenanigans.